Good afternoon, or good afternoon my time, to all the D's fans out there, all the fans of deep diving into the stats and predictions and previews. I am Binman. I am officially up and about. Spring is in the air. Beautiful. Been for a swim today already. It is Friday afternoon my time. Not sure what time you're listening to it, obviously, but big welcome. If it's this afternoon, Friday afternoon, hopefully before the game tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Huge game against Port. 4 points is 4 points. This is such a critical game. And it's funny to think the high of last week, what a performance by the D's. I won't go into it, otherwise I won't stop. Awesome performance by the D's. And, I don't know about listeners in terms of sort of emotionally fronting up, so to speak, for this game against Port. But, it's going to be hard to sort of compare the two games, and hopefully that's not a risk for the team. I don't think it is, in terms of that different level of intensity that they were playing at. But 4 points is 4 points. And so we win this game, we get the same number of premiership points as we got last week for our fantastic performance against the best team in the AFL, Fremantle Dockers. So huge win for us, last week, huge game this week, as is the final round with the Doggies. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Boonwurrung people. Pay respects to elders past and present and emerging leaders, and pay respects to emerging leaders and elders who are listening to the podcast today. As I said, I'm Binman. This is the Stats File Preview podcast. I'm previewing our upcoming game against Port Adelaide tomorrow night at the Adelaide Oval. I'm well and truly up and about. As I said, spring means for me, the spring carnival for me, or the spring betting season, kicks off tomorrow. Cannot wait. Group races at Caulfield. Super exciting. Just turned off to record the podcast. Just turned off the coverage of the test match up in Darwin, Australia versus Bangladesh. Hopefully you won't dislike me too much to hear that I'm going for Bangladesh in this game. I love the fact that we're playing. We haven't supported the sort of smaller cricketing nations as well as we should, I don't think. So it's great to see that game's going on up there in Darwin, and that Bangladesh are doing well. Cricket needs all test teams to be thriving for the great game of cricket to continue. But I'm talking footy today. D's versus Port. So I'm going to jump into my preview probably a little bit differently this week in terms of the preview, and probably no surprise I haven't drilled down to the same depth on Port as I did on Freo, in large part because we should just win this game, and that's no disrespect to Port Adelaide, but it's the classic scenario of a team that's got everything to play for against and is making finals. And if we finish top six, we've got to win these last two games. We simply have to. If we do, we 100% finish top six. Outside chance at finishing top four. So we've got everything to play for, and they've got nothing to play for. No players in Port Adelaide's boat want to sort of get injured in these last couple of rounds, particularly given their injury list is a sort of constant reminder of that. This is so often happens at the end of seasons, which is why, by the way, I think that I think it's pretty clear that it's one of the key reasons that the AFL introduced the wildcard round, because historically there was always these sort of games where one team at the end of the season where one team's got nothing to play for and the other team's got everything to play for, and there's a big mismatch. As I said, I don't mean any disrespect to Port Adelaide in terms of the sort of analysis, and obviously, we can always get beaten. There's no question of that if they don't approach this game in the right way. If they don't bring the right level of intensity. If they take this for granted in any level, open the door to them. Of course, they can beat us. No doubt whatsoever on that front. They've been terrific in many ways this year. They're hitting that late season wall though, which I'll get into. So Just jumping to look at the overview match, the sort of the overview from Willow in terms of these two teams. So the overall rating of the teams, two teams, we're plus 10.9, they're minus 9.9. So that's almost a 20-point differential. That's Willow's ratings system. And it's sort of divided in, or not sort of, it is divided into two categories, attack and defence. So for attacking, our attacking rating is plus 9.4. Their attacking rating is 10.9. They're just not scoring enough, and that's going to be a big issue for them. It's the defining issue, I think. Defensively, they almost match us. So we're plus 1.5. For our defence, they're plus 1. There's been a lot of chat on Demon Land this week on the back of some first crack information and SEN about our defensive challenges, which I'll touch on briefly when I get to the betting. Actually, I'll touch on that. So, it's obviously an area that we need to improve, but it is 100% Port's one wood. So their defensive work has been pretty good this season, and I feel like that Carr has come in and that's what he's worked on, is try to improve their defensive aspect, because under Hinkley they were a very attacking side, and their defence was always their weakness, I felt, in part because it'll be interesting to see how he goes in Tassie, but in part because I feel like Hinkley never really had a sort of modern zone defensive system, and they could get opened up, and often did get opened up, particularly on rebound. And, they struggled to defend transition, a bit like, we're struggling in this last little bit, I guess. So I feel like Carr's come in and he's laid down the marker, which is, let's sort our defence first. We can, you've got the attacking DNA, and so let's shore up our defensive work before we can then sort of build towards being a contender. And of course, that's sort of the inverse of what's happened at Melbourne under King. And it was great to hear, if you get the opportunity, King was interviewed directly after the game on Fox Footy, after the game on the weekend, and he was up and about. He probably only literally come out of the post-match debrief with the player, I guess maybe 5-10 minutes after that, and so he was well and truly up and about. And I was really pleased for him to reference Goody and to pay credit to Goody and say, well, it really pushed back a little bit on this idea that we're a sexy fast ball movement team. That's what we are. And he was pretty strong on in fact, our identity is contest and defense and pressure. And that was built on a core, a foundation that Goody built, and I hadn't heard him say that all season. So I was really pleased to hear it. And of course it's true. But, King's done the opposite to what Carr's doing. We had the defensive contest DNA embedded already. We needed just to get that ball movement and flair and individuality and excitement. That's that layer that we need to build, and that's what he's focused on. There's a real big discussion that, as I said, that I touched on about our defensive work, and it's clearly something we need to improve. But I would argue we are improving in that space. So overall, as I said, we're plus 10.9, they're 9.9. They struggle to score. They defend pretty well. That's the sort of short version of where they're at. Team lineups, the average age of these two teams, interesting. We're 26.3 and they're 24.2 years of age for this selected team. Average matches, wow, we've smashed them for experience. 120.7 games is our average experience. They're only 71.7. I'll speak to their injury list in a second, but that's what's behind that. That's the main driver of that. That's a big gap in experience. That's a really, that's a huge sort of indicator, I guess, as well of the, they're a pretty inexperienced young team. It's another challenge for them at the end of a long season. We've played head-to-head. We've played Port Adelaide 42 times. They've won 25 times. We've won 17 times. Venue at the, good record at Port Adelaide, against Port Adelaide at the venue. They've won 5 times. We've won 4. So we win this game, which I hope we will. I think we will. It will be 5-5, so level, which is no small thing at Adelaide Oval, which is, obviously big home support for both Port Adelaide and the Crows. So, that's just a quick overview of that stuff. I'm going to get back to the the sort of overall team stats a little bit later. Just moving on to our summary, the form summary of what's happened in recent times. Ins and outs, I'll start with. So in for them is Lockie Jones, Xavier Bammett, Joe Richards, Mitch Georgiadis. He's a good in for them. Out is Darcy Byrne-Jones, is an ill-timed suspension for him. Good for us, Christian Moraes, Jackson Mead and Will Lorenz. And we've gone with an unchanged side. I thought that Heath might come in. But I really love the fact. So, that's an open conversation, isn't it, about doesn't Maxi need a chop out? It would appear the club's answer to that question is no, he doesn't need a chop out. So much to the chagrin of many Demon Landers and certainly George, if you're listening, George. So no Heath in this game, so no ruck chop out. JVR, I guess, will be doing a bit, and maybe Petty will come up and do a bit, and Tom McDonald has taken one or two, but he's just a machine, Maxi, so no changes. And, I think that I had expected some changes, as I said on Monday night on the podcast, on the Demonland podcast, so a little bit of a surprise for me, but I really respect the sort of in selection integrity. It was one of the greatest wins of, for a long, long time last week. So I think it's a really respectful approach to reward that and not drop any of the players who were involved in one of the great wins of the Melbourne Footy Club in recent memory. So King's gone with an unchanged lineup. In terms of the impact of those outs, it's about the same. So, well, obviously none for us, but they on the player ratings, the changes are negative 0.5 for them. So for Port, so really it's. I guess Mitch Georgiadis is the big one for them coming back in, balanced up by losing Darcy Byrne-Jones. So in terms of the recent form and Port's recent form, going back, first of all, our recent encounter with them was last year, so we haven't played since June last year. It's a long time, and we only played them once last year. We're only playing them once this year. We played them at home last year. We're playing them at home this year again, so a bit of luck, we get to play Port Adelaide at our home deck next year. How would that sound, AFL? Maybe a bit of equity in your fixturing. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that sort of joke, because of course there is no equity in their fixturing system. The last time we played, they won 14-9, 93 to 68. 9-14, so what's that, 23 scoring shots apiece, and we lost by 25 points, which was, that was the tale of the tape so many times last year for us, wasn't it? But we're not talking about last year, we're talking about this year. So form, in terms of the comparative form, Port Adelaide are 15th on the ladder, 6 wins and 15 losses. I can't recall what round it was, but I think maybe round 12 or something, people were pumping up the tyres of Port. They were third at that stage, or I'm pretty sure it was around that point, for quarters one for the season, which coaches put a lot of stock in, because sort of as an indicator of success, particularly for teams that are sort of pushing up from the bottom or looking to, they're on an upward trajectory. Hopefully it's a good indicator. I'm pretty sure that would have dropped away since then. Defensively, they've been really strong. And so, for a while there, the pundits have stopped saying this now, but for a while there, people were saying they were a much better team than their ladder position indicates, and that it's probably true. They have really been hit hard by injury, and doing these previews and digging into the opposition, the opponent's injury list. A lot of teams have had big injury concerns this season. A lot of teams, so I wonder whether the changing nature of the game in terms of the speed of ball movement's a factor with that. I'm sure they'll unpack that at the end of the season, all the medicos and high-performance programs. Port Adelaide, well, they've lost their last 5. They might have lost more, but I've got the last 5 in front of me. They, of course, got smashed last week against Sydney, 167-70, and that's the sort of game that I was referring to earlier. When one team's got everything to play for, Sydney, in their case, they need to finish. I think to win the flag, they need to finish second to make sure they get a qualifying home final in week 1 of finals, or week 2 if you count wildcard round as being week one of the official finals, I guess. They got mauled, so 26-11 to 10-10. And yeah, as I say, that was a sort of perfect example of the late season game that the AFL wanted to address, those sort of lopsided results that wanted to address in part with the wildcard round. Before that, they were competitive and fought out well against the Giants, 63-75 at home. That was a sort of scrubby game. 126-67, they got beaten by the Lions previously, so another touch-up. They got touched up by Freo. 70. It wasn't too bad, actually, that performance. That was a pretty sort of average performance by Freo in some... in Freo, the score was 75-80, 103. And then their previous match was another competitive performance, only going down by 14 points at Darklands to the Saints back in July, or 11th of July. So it's their last five. So that, a couple of them were competitive, but in particular, they lost to St Kilda and Port Adelaide. But after that, they really sort of hit the wall a little bit. Although I guess they were competitive against the Giants. Of course, we had our season-defining win last week. It was an amazing victory. I'm still riding high on it. I've watched the replay 3 times. I've watched every single highlight I can get a hand on. I've been thoroughly disappointed with the, you won't be surprised to learn this, thoroughly disappointed with the analysis on the various shows about it. So annoyed with the palaver around Pearce not being selected. I mean, come on, we didn't have Howes, please, what are you doing? It was a huge performance. So yeah, a season-defining win, I think, and certainly gives us it locks away 6th spot, hopefully. The previous week, of course, we beat the Suns in an entertaining game up there on the Gold Coast, 114-105. We got rolled by the Cats. Before that, we beat the Roos in what was a really spiteful game, and it was sort of a physical game. But I thought the Roos were pretty good, and on the back of that, was pretty keen to follow them in and backed them last week actually to win, and win they did. So, and the previous week we beat the Tigers, of course, at the G. So, yeah, I think that obviously the 2 records don't, stack up particularly well, and we're obviously the team that should win, expected to win on form, on ladder position, on all of those things. Injury has just been a horror show for Port Adelaide, and until I dug into this, actually, I started looking, to be perfectly honest, I didn't realise how bad it was. So they've got 11 players, not including tests. They've got 11 players on their injury list at the moment. I'll just quickly run through them. Zach Butters, Darcy Byrne-Jones, he's on this injury list, but he's suspended. So Logan Evans, Kane Farrell, Jason Horne-Francis, Lockie Jones, Manny Liddy, Ollie Lord, Jack Lukosius, Ewan McKinlay, Sam Powell-Pepper, Sava Radlikalia, Connor Rosey, Josh Sin, and Jack Watson. That's a huge list. And often it's sort of the numbers of players on the injury list is obviously a big thing. But as I've talked about, it really the key is how many best 23 players are on the injury list and not available. And sort of the subset of that is how many top 5, hopefully, teams for their sake don't have any of their top 5 players out. Port Adelaide, looking at theirs, it's a horror show. In terms of best 23, I mean, certainly Zach Butters, Darcy Byrne-Jones, Kane Farrell, Horne-Francis is on this list actually, but he's a test, so he'll play, although I'm amazed he is selected, because why would you take any risk whatsoever? If he's got bone bruising, which seems to be the case, why would you take any risk whatsoever? Won't shock me at all if he comes out and an emergency comes in. So getting back to best 23, Zach Butters, Darcy Byrne-Jones, Kane Farrell, I'm not sure about Ollie Lord, certainly Jack Lukosius, certainly Sam Powell-Pepper, Radikalia, of course, Connor Rosey. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 6 of their best, let's say 7 for the sake of argument, 7 of their best 23 not available. That's a third of the side, 8 if you take out Jason Horne-Francis. So it's massive. You can't, really, you can't compete against the very best sides with that sort of injury list. Of top 5, obviously Zach Butters is number 1. There's talk about him playing next week, but if you were a Doggies fan, you would be certainly keen for him to not be playing and not risking any further injury. But I mean, he's one of the best players in the AFL. His player rating, I think, I'll speak to them in a second, but is 18 or some such. So massive out. He's their best player. So that's one top 5 player out. I don't reckon Horne-Francis will play. Let's say he doesn't. That's 2. I'm not sure about Pal Pepper if they would consider him in their top 5. I don't think so, but he's certainly an important player for them for a range of reasons, particularly the energy he brings. And the other one, of course, is Connor Rozee. And Kane Farrell is probably right up. He'd have an argument as top 5 players. I mean, the other one obviously is Aliir, who is playing. So they're looking at, let's say for the sake of argument that Horne-Francis doesn't play. That's their top 3 players right there not playing in this game. You take out Cos, that would be the equivalent for us of taking out Cos, Max, and Sparrow, who's our 3rd rated highest player, who I'm going to speak to in a little bit more detail in a second. So when I get to the key players, so their injury list is formidable. Even if they weren't, even if they were in contention with that sort of injury list, it would be hard to see them beating us with that sort of injury list. So the fact that they out of contention, don't have much to play for, in a way, there's an advantage to finish lower rather than higher. And they've got that injury list, and no one wants to get injured. I think it makes it really difficult for them to sort of, obviously makes it difficult for them to win as reflected in the odds, which I'll speak to in a sec. Our injury list is coming good at just the right time of the season. I love it. So our injury list is Jed Adams. He's out for the season. Jai Cully, likewise. Blake Howes, hopefully back in that first week of the elimination final. Tommy Matthews is I presume, he's out for the season, but his shoulder injury, I presume they've put him in for surgery and clean that up, and he'll really thrive. He keeping in mind Tom Matthews, a PCL injury, I do believe, that was why he sort of dropped down the draft order. I think he's a really important player moving forward, but we don't need to rush him. It will be his first full AFL preseason. The PCL was still an issue for him, but the draftees come in a bit later in the season. They miss the first couple of weeks of training anyway, so he'll look forward, get that shoulder cleaned up. He'll look forward to a huge preseason and really start putting pressure for selection next year. Looking forward to that. Brody Mychek, of course, he's out for the season, and Andy Menzies-Wakefield. So look, that's as best as it's been pretty much all season. Probably of that list, and of course the big one missing from there is Jack Viney. Awesome news. Xavier Lindsay's off that. Both of them are playing. He played last week. He played scratch match. No, he played a Casey game. Both of those players will be lining up with Latrell at Casey. That's going to be at Box Hill. With Casey at Box Hill against the Box Hill Hawks. What a game that's going to be. It's well worth getting along. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, but I'm going to try. That will be certainly something to see those players going, flat out. You'd expect to force their way into, or try and force their way into the team ahead of the finals. I wouldn't want to be a Box Hill Hawks midfielder or defender if Jack Viney plays up forward on Sunday, that's for sure. In terms of that injury list, that's awesome. That's a really terrific injury list now compared to where it was. Jai Cully's best 23, Blake Howes is best 23 of that list. Brody Mychek, may not be now. So, that's only 2 of our best 23 not available, which is massive. And none of our top 5, touch wood, I'm touching every sort of wood I can, just reached out to touch that block of wood in the corner there. So, yeah, we're in as good a shape as we've been for a long, long time. And just with Housey sort of to come back in. And, I'll be super excited to see how the those players go at Casey against Box Hill on Sunday. It's a classic old VFL game, isn't it? Casey versus Box Hill Hawks at Box Hill. A lot riding on that game for a game that's not going to do anything for the VFL finals, that's for sure. So. In terms of the betting, looking at the betting in this game, they're 4.10 to win. We're $1.24 for, it wouldn't happen very often that we're $1.24 to beat Port in Port. They're the current odds. The line is 27.5. And the total match points is 189. In terms of the future bets, we're into $3 to make the top 4, $1.36 to finish top 6, and we're $13 to win the flag. And the reason I raise that is that there's been heaps of discussion on Demon Land this week about the stats that are coming out that, defensively, we haven't got the profile of a contender. One of them was, I think that the turnover, bottom 5 first scores from turnover, and one team in 18 years or some such has won the flag with that. And the sort of more common one, and actually the better one, is the top in terms of statistics. I think is that we're outside the top 6 for scores against, and I think I'm right in saying Roos is the only team in the last 30 years that won a flag. The reason I wanted to put that here to sort of touch on that in the betting odds section is that as a punter, as a lifelong sort of ponies punter, is that data, I look at data and stats through the lens of, in the same way I look at data and stats that inform my form, developing a form, and looking at the form for races. So they don't speak to, they don't speak to what will happen. They speak to what has happened. All data, all statistics. They describe events that have happened. So I said this on the podcast on Monday, is one of the things I really like about stats and sort of is, for me, they describe events in the game. They're not numbers sort of that float in space. So, a contested ball win, as I've talked about, has got multiple aspects. And it's, it describes how you get the ball off the opposition, or when the ball's in dispute, how your team wins the footy, for instance. All of them are like that, but they are, those historical numbers, they're absolutely worth factoring in, and worth considering. Just in the same way, I put a lot of stock in horse racing on record in the conditions. So if a horse is, if it's a soft 5 track and a horse has had 10 starts for no wins in soft, I'll generally draw a line through it. That cost me a little bit over the journey, because of course that doesn't mean they can't win, and they often do. A horse is 10 to 1 doesn't mean it can't win. It means that it's not probable. And the same goes for the sort of stats that have been bandied around about our defence. For one thing, that bottom 5 thing, if we keep, I did the math on this, if we keep Port and the Dogs, we concede in those 2 matches 68 points or less on turnover. We'll be outside that, the bottom 5 for scores from turnover. So, that takes that off the table in any case. We won't move from outside the top 6 for scores against. So, but, those statistics speak to probabilities is what I'm getting to. And in punting, the sort of the thing is trying to find the value is to work out what the true odds of an event happening are. And you take a whole lot of data points in horse racing and into that to frame your own probability market, if you like, and then you marry that probability, your assessment of the probability, up with the probability with the odds that you're available to get. And if the probability they're offering is greater, the odds are greater, then you back it. It's good value. So, so that's all a way of saying is don't get hung up on those sorts of things, because things change. The game's changing. A lot of the records in say horse racing around Spring Carnival shifted recently because some of the key races have moved in where they are in the calendar, for example, and that changes the dynamic. There's a whole bunch of similar things, and same in footy. I personally think that the stand rule and there's the AFL's sort of efforts to make the game quicker and less stoppages, which has been hugely successful, I have to say. And if successful in terms of meeting that aim, there's something like 10 to 15 less stoppages this year than there were, say, 5 years ago. So they've got their wish on that front. So that's a big factor in the way the game's changed. And then, the ruck rule has been another one. The other big one, of course, is the lasso, out of bounds, last touch rule, which has also helped the game speed up. Those things all need to be factored into those sort of historical data points. And for me, the go is to triangulate, get multiple different data points. The bottom line, though, the corollary, that's the other thing. The corollary for those odds, the probability, for instance, of a team not winning a flag if they're bottom 4 or bottom 5 for scores from turnover, is that's sort of a season long. If we can, the corollary to that is that if we can be top 5, for instance, in those stats in the for the rest of the season, including finals, well, then we'll win the flag. So that points to what has happened. It doesn't say what will happen, is I guess what I'm saying. And it's why I raised the flag odds. We're $13 to win the flags. So that's I back hundreds and hundreds of horses that have been over $13. It can happen. That's what, it doesn't mean it's impossible. So $13 means it's very possible. There's a 12 to 1 chance that we'll win the flag. That's essentially that. And, if, of course, we're not favourites to win it, but we've definitely got a chance to win it on probability. So, yeah, don't. Speaking of horses, don't let horses get too scared with all of these defensive profile stats is my advice. So just quickly on the weather, Saturday night looks really nice. Let's have a look here. So weather, after a pretty dry day, maybe a little bit, they're looking at 0.8 mils during the day. At night, it's 7 degrees, becoming cloudy, real feel 5, so it could be pretty dewy on the ground after, say, half time. But bugger all winds, east-southeast 13 kilometres, wind gust 32. No rain, cloud cover 74%. Hopefully that will keep the dew away. Looking perfect conditions for footy. It's an awesome oval, really terrific oval, isn't it? Adelaide Oval suits us. It's big, it's wide. We should really be able to use our running power. It's and exploit our running power over them. So perfect weather conditions in Adelaide Saturday night. I'm just going to quickly do some sort of high level stats of Port in terms of their sort of statistical categories. I won't go into too much detail, as I said before. So in terms of their high rankings, they're 4th in the AFL, number 4 for hitouts per game. They're 2nd in least opponent clearances per game, which is interesting. I guess that's related to the hitouts. So, that's a strength of theirs in terms of their sort of clearance work is generally been pretty good. They've got, obviously, when Zach Butters is playing, which he's not, he's, the absolute key driver of that. So, their clearance game is going to suffer a bit, even more so if Jason Horne-Francis doesn't play. That goes without saying. They're also 5th in least opponent 1%ers per game, which is a useless stat. What is that one? So, they haven't really got many high rankings at all. 1st in least opponent centre clearances per game, sort of speaks to their ability to clear the ball, I guess. terms of their low ranking, this is one that's really important, I think, for this match, is they're somewhat surprisingly 15th in contested possessions per game. They're 17th in uncontested possessions per game, which is important. They're a low disposal team as well. Why I say surprisingly they're 15th in contested possessions per game is that normally that combination low disposal territory team, which they have moved to away from their sort of fast ball movement under Hinkley, is generally that correlates with also being good at the contest. And so 15th in contested possessions is not great for them, I don't think. They're 17th in uncontested possession. They're 18th in effective disposals per game, so they give the ball back to the opposition a lot. They're 13th in contested marks per game. 15th in score involvements per game. They're a really low-scoring side. 14th in meters gained per game. So, again, got not great numbers for a territory team. They're 15th in tackles inside 50 per game. So, yeah, those sorts of numbers aren't, sort of point to some of the concerns for them. I mean, they are on the, they're dropped down to look to go back up. But, they're also 18th in handballs per game. So they're a kicking side, dead last in the number of handballs per game, 16th in disposals per game, 15th in points per game. So they're not scoring enough. They, as I said before, their defence is their one wood. They're only 12th in tackles per game, which is surprisingly 13th for inside 50s per game. So really middling numbers. All of those numbers are all pretty middling in terms of where they're at. And all of them have been driven by the last sort of handful of games with Butters in the side. So, without him, all of those numbers would drop away pretty significantly. Just looking at our high rankings, because I don't normally do this, so I'll just touch on us. We're 5th in points per game. We're 4th for number 4 in the AFL for inside 50s per game. We're 3rd in goal assists per game, which is excellent. I really like that stat. Shows that, everyone gets a lick of the ice cream, as they love to say. They share the ball around. Great example of that was Petty instinctively giving that handball to Frida in the last quarter when he got the free kick, sort of 30 metres out. Didn't even think about it, handballed it off. Thankfully, Frida kicked the goal. But for me, it sort of spoke to that team ethos, which is reflected in the goal assists per game. So we're 3rd in the AFL for them. We're 3rd in least opponent tackles per game, which is curious. In terms of other high rankings, we're 5th in contested possessions per game. So I mentioned they were 15th. We're 5th. We're 4th in contested marks per game. Fantastic strength of ours this year. I really been loving our contested marking. It's been a bugbear of mine for years and years, how few contested marks we take, and we're right up there with the very best this season. We're 1st in setting clearances per game. That is, Maxi. And not just Maxi, of course, our centre square setup has been terrific. We're on fire last week. And in terms of our low ranking, definitely speaking to our game plan, or the way we like to play our method, I should say. 15th in uncontested possessions per game. We don't dilly-dally with the ball, as I keep talking about. Low disposal, straight line to the goal, get it forward, win the next contest. 15th in effective disposals per game, 13th in 1%ers per game. And this one's really interesting. I'd sort of love to unpack this a little bit with Kingy if I ever got that opportunity, but we're 16th in stoppage clearances per game. Now, we're a territory team. Stoppages are really important, but that's a really low ranking for, number of raw stoppage clearances. Of course, it scores from clearances, which is the critical number. But nonetheless, for a team that is, as I said, territory focus, stoppage clearances per game, 16th is somewhat surprising that we're that low. It makes me wonder whether, they're using sort of strategies around the ground, like bringing extras to the stoppage to sort of mitigate the strength of Max Gawn's tap work and ruck work. And I'd love to sort of dig into that a little bit. If anyone's got any ideas, put it on the stats file, Binman stats file, straight on Demolan, as to why you think that we're 16th for stoppage clearances per game. Our what was the other 12th in kicks per game, 13th in handballs per game, just reflecting our being low disposal team, 14th in disposals per game, 13th in marks per game, 13th in clangers per game, which is good. That's something we've improved in from last year. Much less turnovers in terms of and much less clangers than last year. In terms of I just sort of also thought I'd touch on just our statistical sort of player rankings in leaders. So I don't normally do this, but more sort of, I guess I've been focusing on the player ratings. But so contested possessions per game, our number one for us is Maxi Gawn, 13.14 contested possessions per game. Uncontested possessions per game, Jake Bowie. Effective disposals per game, number one for us is Jake Bowie. Contested marks per game, no surprise here. Number one is Max Gawn. Marks inside 50 per game, the best for us. Number one is Roy, I should say. Jacob Van Roy, and he is averaging 2.29 marks inside 50. Tommy McDonald, love this. He is our number one for 1%ers per game. And how awesome would that be if he finishes his career at AFL and Melbourne Footy Club? Shout out, Tom. Awesome work. That would just be perfect symbolism, a perfect sort of metaphor for his commitment, his professionalism, and what he's contributed to the Melbourne Footy Club. He is number one for us for 1%ers per game so far this season. Hopefully that remains the same. Max Gawn also is number one for centre clearances per game, which is bananas. He's also, believe it or not, number one for stoppage clearances per game. Wowza, is number one for metres gained per game. He's just 529.69 metres gained per game, and it really speaks to how important he's been for us since he's come back in. Score involvements per game is Cozzy, number one, 6.86. Turnovers per game is Tommy Sparrow's number one for us, but that speaks to the pressure he's under all the time when he is kicking and handballing. Jake Lever leads our intercepts. He's number one for intercepts, and our tackles inside 50. It's Aiden Johnston, but he probably doesn't count. There goes my dog going bananas, and another dog. So. I'm just going to have to pause that, and I'm going to go sort him out. Alrighty, where was I? I'm back now. I've sorted out my dog for the time being. I'm sure he'll go bananas soon again, as is his wont. There's some of our sort of top listing, our categories that we're, our rankings, our AFL rankings compared to them. When you look at these two teams, I mentioned before, in terms of team stats, time forward half, we're 51.5, they're 50.6. So they're also a forward half team. But as I said, their numbers aren't sort of so great in that space. They're +3 for clearances differential. We're only +0.7, which is interesting. This is the one where I feel like the sort of game is the our number one strength, almost arguably, is our contested ball. We're +4.7 contested possessions against our opponents on average this season. They are -3.2. And that's not a great number for any team, but particularly one like Port under Carr, who's trying to sort of implement a similar game plan to us. I suspect at least one that's sort of based on territory and getting it forward, which is Freo's game plan too, and really sort of winning the contest. And for us, that's amalgamated with our super fast ball movement and playing on all the time, and not holding the ball up. So in terms of attacking, we've got them for all of the attacking numbers, bar one, which is interesting, scores for inside 50. They score 46.1% of the time. They go inside 50, we're 45.7. They just don't get it inside 50 enough. We're averaging 99.1 points per game this season, and just leaving everything else aside, all of the sort of conversation about our defensive profile and all of that palaver. How exciting is it to be, round 23? And the Mighty D's, we're almost averaging 100 points per game. It is great. It is terrific. It makes for very exciting footy, makes it so enjoyable to go along and watch us. big tick. King said at the beginning of the season he wanted Melbourne to be, Melbourne fans to be excited about their team to come along and love watching us play and, being up and about footy and players really being encouraged to express themselves. And that's what we've got. So, huge tick to Stephen King, but even bigger tick to the players. So I think there's, just on that, I feel like there's a bit of a Messiah thing with King building, and not enough credit goes to the players. I'm a real big believer that that performance. Of course, the coach plays a role, but I think it's overrated. It's really for me about unlocking the key role of the coach is unlocking the sort of potential of the players, a bit like a teacher. That's why David Parkin always talked about coaching like a teacher, because of course he was a teacher, and that's what it's about. Good coaching are good teachers. Good teachers help people to help them meet their potential, and that's what King has done this year. Our big improvement has been all of those mid-tier players, Sparrow, who I'll speak to in a sec, but all of them really, just everyone's improved, but that's more on the players than King. So I think it's a little bit disrespectful to the players to sort of the inference being like, what has King done to change all of these things? Yeah, good. I mean, he's been fantastic. I think, though, a sort of a fair question for balance is, what have the players done? Huge shout out for the players. They deserve heaps of respect. The other thing is, there's some research that suggested that it's less about the coach, more about the leaders within the team. And we've got the greatest leader Melbourne Footy Club's ever seen. I really believe that. Max Gawn, he's been huge. You don't have to look at that last quarter. He chose to come off. King was asked who makes that call, Maxi or him, in terms of coming off. And this was in that post-match, not the post-match presser, the interview straight after debriefing the players that I spoke about earlier at the top. I think I'm right in saying that he said that Maxi makes that call. 100% game time in that last quarter. Didn't leave the ground in the last quarter. We win that match by 4 points. That's leadership. He's incredible. Really interestingly for me, at least in terms of the comparison of the sort of team stats at a higher level, is the defensive stats. So when we play, for even the Suns, for instance, but Tigers is a good example, they didn't have us covered in any of the stats, attacking, defence, or those time in forward, half time in possession, contested possessions, or clearance that I touch on each week. So maybe one perhaps for something obscure, but Port, however, have in the categories that Willow has listed in his preview, total points from turnover, points from stoppage, change to scoring percentage, defensive 50 to forward 50 percentage, inside 50 in shots, scores for inside 50, defending those things. Port has us covered in each of them, bar one. So running through them, total points, they're only averaging against is 86.7. So teams are only scoring 86.7 on average against Port. Speaks to what I said before, I think, about Carr coming in and doing the reverse of what King has done and trying to get a foundation of defence first DNA sort of into the team. And they've been, super successful at doing so. Look for them to do that again against us. So they're only giving up 86.7. Conversely, we're giving up 92.1. Important to note, I've made this point a number of times, is that around 10 we were giving up on average 100. So we're trending in the right direction for that. So that's the other factor with the talk about our defensive weaknesses, is we're trending in the right direction, including points from turnover. I've made this point in the podcast. We only gave up 46 points from turnover against Freo last week. No one mentioned it in the, everyone's clobbering us around the head around our defensive weaknesses, in particular not being able to defend turnover. Well, we come up against the best team in the AFL, and not only do we smash them scoreboard-wise, 113 points, I think it was 113. We also, only give up 46 points on turnover. That's amazing. And, I didn't hear Montagna even mention it. So we were criticised, for instance, for giving up 101 points on turnover against the Cats. Fair criticism. Well, where's the plaudits for only giving up 46 points against the very best team in the AFL in Fremantle? Is extraordinary, really, and it's why we won the game. That's what I said in the preview. If we matched them in that space, we'd win. We more than matched them in that space. It was plus 13, I think, for scores from turnover for us. But the important one is defensively, we only gave up 46 points. And it's worth noting too is that the just talking about last week, it's worth noting the in that score, the expected score from their turnover chains was only a touch over 33. So, if the only reason it was 46, the only reason they got to 46 points at all for scores from turnover is their accuracy. So, we on expected score for them, we kept them under 40 points, well under 40 points for points from turnover. So, yeah, trending in the right direction, but getting back to this game. So points from turnover, we're giving up, speaking of points from turnover, we're giving up 53.2 per game. They're giving up 49.5 per game. So they defend turnover better than us, but they also don't attack as much as us. So it's easier to defend turnover. Obviously, if you're not going up and down the ground, you can just set your defence. These numbers, that's a caveat on all of these defensive numbers. They aren't, they're not a high-scoring side. They don't push their envelope in that space. They don't look to attack, and so your defensive systems aren't going to be stressed as much. And that's, by the by, is the major, and I talked about this when I did the preview of the Crows game. That's Crows' problem. I mean, they're going to get smashed tonight. I'm really looking forward to watching that game because they're the second best defensive side in the AFL, Crows, behind Freo, and we'll have to put that on show tonight. But that's the way footy's trending, which is a bit my point too about the betting thing is trending, is that points in time shift, and so who knows? Maybe we're at a point where the trend is shifting, and scores are so high. It's become so important to be able to put scoreboard pressure on and score in bursts. That's why I don't, think Crows are really much threat, because sure, they're defensively strong, but they don't have offensive power, and nor do power. Speaking of power, so and just on that, like as an example of the trend that changing is, it was 5-6 years ago, it was a hard and fast sort of statistical rule. You heard it all the time: is teams don't win from outside four. Well, and the exception to that rule in the recent times was the Dogs in 2016. Brisbane did it last year, and they lost in one of their finals. That never used to happen. So, and am I right in saying Brisbane? No, they finished top four the previous year, but last year they, so it can happen, is my point. So, and trends will change, and perhaps we're in the middle of a pattern changing, and we'll ride that change to success, hopefully. So. They also I mentioned points from stoppage, 36.2. We're giving up their 33.2. Change to score percentage, they defend a little bit better. These are all marginal. Defensive, they defend opposition ball movement, D50 to 50%, bit better than us, actually 20.9% to 25%, so quite a bit better. But again, that's to do with the fact that they're not attacking. They're not sort of pressing up and leaving a sort of rebound opportunity at the back. Inside 50s, their opponents, Port's opponents have 50.9, ours have 53.1, but we invite inside 50s with the way we play. They're having 25 points. Their opponents are having 25.6 shots a game, 27. The only defensive stat that we've got them covered in these ones that I'm listing, there's others, but in these ones here, is scores for inside 50. So our opponents score 45.3% of the time, and their opponents score 45.9. So, yeah, defensively they're really strong, and it'll be interesting to see tactically what they do in this game in terms of trying to slow down our scoring. And for me, that's going to be the sort of critical aspect of the game, where they're going to do that enough. I don't think they'll be able to, but certainly that's what they'll be working to do. Looking at the key Oppo players, geez, it's hard work for them, really hard work in terms of their, their injury list, as I mentioned before. I think that before I do that, I'll just speak to their rating players. So their top-rated players, and this is including injured players, so their let's say the top 6 or 7 I'll go through. So Zach Butters, obviously, his player rating is 18, huge loss for them. Jason Horne-Francis is their second highest rated player, 13.1. Willem Drew, he is 12. His player rating this season is 12. Alan Van Wyk is a ruckman, but his player rating is 11.8, but that's based off one game, I should say. So Jordan Sweet, he's 11.1, and Alia, his rating this season is not what I would have thought it normally would be, is 9.9. His player rating, Jace Burgoyne, who I've got a lot of time for, is 9.4. Joe Richards is 9.3. Kane Farrell and Miles Bergman. That's sort of roughly their top 10 of ours. Has changed. There's been a change at the top of ours. So our number one, no shock who our number one is. It's Maxi. And then number 2 is Cozzy. No shock there either. Maxi's 17.8. Cozzy's 15.8. What a brilliant game he had last week. Third is Tommy Sparrow, 13.7. I'm trying to think, maybe he was third, but no, the swap has been Bowie's moved up to our 4th highest rated player, 11.3, and Jack Steele, Kay Chandler has dropped out of our top 5 players for his rating this season. So what am I talking about? It's 12.6 is Kay Chandler. I mix up here the predicted ratings. Willow has predicted ratings. I'm not sure about them. So Max Gorn, Cozzy Pickett, Tom Sparrow, Jack Bowie, Jake Steele, Kay Chandler, and Trent Rivers. They're our top 7 players. In terms of who I think the key players for them are in this match, Alia, Willem Drew, Jordan Sweet, Jason Horne-Francis, and Jace Burgoyne are my top 5 rated players for them. Alia and Willem Drew, because defensively they're going to have to stop us scoring. I think that, and Jace Burgoyne's key to their scoring, and so is Horne-Francis, and Jordan Sweet. Is really there. He's going head to head with Maxi, so his role will be important. I love Alia as a footballer. He's a terrific footballer. He's key to the way they intercept the ball. Basically doesn't come off the ground this season. He's 99.2% time on ground, which is crazy. He's played. Where is he? He's kicked a goal. He's played every single game this season. He's averaging 15.6 disposal a game. He goes at 80.2% efficiency. Sort of average meters gained 277. He's averaging 5.4 clearances per game. Really critical player for them in terms of how he goes, in terms of being a general bound back, but in particular his ability to intercept. Be interesting to see what tactics we use to mitigate his intercept skills. We've been really effective in that space, I think, in recent weeks. He's a critical player. Willem Drew is also another important player. He's important for how they move the ball. High meters gained, or at least his higher meters gained for this match. Let's have a look. He's actually not the 271.6 meters gained. His average is just 18.8 disposals. His efficiency is not great, 69.6. He's an important player for the way they move the ball, though. He's a connector. His rating this season is really solid, 12 player rating points. In terms of meters gained, just as a sort of, I guess, as further sort of example of how impactful their injuries are, their 3 highest meter gain players are Kane Farrell, Zach Butters, Connor Rozee, 500, and all are not playing. So no wonder they're struggling to move the ball from end to end. Horne-Francis is next, and Miles Bergen, and then Jack Lukosius rounds out their top 6, and he's not playing. In fact, now that I look at it, their top 10 of their top 12 meters gain players, I think, and that's what it is, 8 aren't playing in this game. So that's crazy. That's just shows the impact injury can have. Horne-Francis is a fantastic player. 13.1 player rating points this season. He's averaging 23.3 disposals. His efficiency is 62.9, but he gets a lot of his ball. He gets a lot of his ball under pressure, obviously. Inside 50s, he's their number 2 player for inside 50s. He's 4 in inside 50s per game. Their number 1, Zach Butters, Jace Burgoyne, he's son of a gun, got good skills. He's their third player for inside 50s, 3.7 per game. So, as I said, really important in terms of their ball movement and their connecting piece from defence to forward, as is Willem Drew, sort of that the connector player. He's of the players, he's their fifth rated player for inside 50s, and in this game he's third, so 3.6 per game. So James Horne-Francis, Burgoyne and Drew are all critical for how they move the ball and in particular how they get the ball inside 50, which is going to be a big factor in this game in terms of their ability, or otherwise, as the case may be, to put a score on the board or put a competitive score on the board. In terms of contested possessions in this game, Horne-Francis is averaging 10 per game. He's and Willem Drew, Jordan Sweet. So they're key players for them. As I said, Jace Burgoyne, he's averaging 8 contested possessions per game. I just wanted to talk about quickly these players. I just really briefly talk about Tom Sparrow. Mega exciting news, really fantastic news. It sounds likely, hopefully, Tom Morris has come out and said that it looks like that he's agreed to a 5-year deal. Awesome for the footy club. Awesome. I'm really hoping, if true, they announce it tonight. He's just... I love him, heart and soul player. I've always loved Tommy Sparrow, but he's just gone up a level. So I thought I'd spend a little time on giving him some love. He's his season rating this season is 13.7, and he's 75.2% time on ground. He basically goes to almost every single, well, not every single, but it's sort of 80% of centre clearances, or centre bounces, I should say. He's been a leader. I love how he's improved his kicking, or perhaps he's been given more opportunity and he's more confident to go for his kicks. But his kicking has been just magnificent. So I just thought I'd speak briefly to his season thus far. So he's played his play rating this season is 13.68. For context, his career average is 8.6 player rating points. And for last season, his was below that. His career average was his player rating for 25 was 7.21. His player rating for the previous year, 24, was 7.58. In his best year, in terms of player ratings before this, was 9.23 in 2023. In the premiership year, he played 21 matches and his player rating was 5.9. And I mean, that speaks very much to the role that he was asked to play. Of course, he's thrived given the extra minutes and opportunity that with Vines not being fit, but of Track and Clary leaving the club. He's been incredible. He's not only sort of replaced the impact of those players, he's been more impactful than both, I think, were last season. But he's also a leader in a way that neither were, and in the sense of, come with me, boys, vocal, on field. I can see him being absolutely the next captain of the Melbourne Footy Club. So his season this far has been just terrific. So in his career thus far, he's had 9 coaches' votes. He had 7 in 22, and he had 2 last year. He's had 45 coaches' votes thus far this season. How's that? So he's, as I said, his player ratings this season, 36.8. He's played every single game this season thus far, 75.2% time on ground. He's basically just almost, not quite, but almost doubled his disposal count. He's averaging almost 22.9 disposals a game this season, against an average last year of, what was it? Let's have a look here before I make this mistake again. 13 last year. So 22.9 this season, 13 last year. That massive jump up, huge jump up with him. He had more time on the ground last year. So 79.7% time on ground last year, 75.2% time on ground this year, and he's almost doubled his number of disposals. His kicking efficiency is about the same as it was, but his handball efficiency is better, 84.8 this season, 80 last year. His metres gained, almost doubled, 413.6 metres gained he is this season. Last year was 216. So his career average is 257. Clangers, we won't talk about clangers, all positive here. This is huge. 9.3 contested possessions per game this season. His career average is 5.9. Last year, only 4.5 contested possessions per game. He's obviously having more uncontested possessions as well. Loose ball gets, he's 4.3. Loose ball gets is a really important number, buried away often, but it's that ability to run to the contest to win that ball that's in dispute, and you get to it first. If you watch him, he so often sort of gets to those balls. Partly that's his running power and how fit he is, and it's also how well he's reading the game. So similarly, ground ball gets, he's averaging 5.9 ground ball gets a game this year, against last year 3.1 and a season average of 4.1. So, basically in every category, he is really killing it. So centre bounce attendances, 22 per game. We only had 1.9 per game last year. How's that for a change? So he's gone from under 2 centre bounce attendances per game to 22 per game this season. Centre bounce attendance percentages, he goes to 69.5% percentage of CBA attendances of all CBAs of centre bounces. Last year it was only 6.6%. So he played a funny role last year where he was giving Viney a chop out, basically. A complete change in all of these numbers. Centre clearances, he's averaging 2.9 to last year 0.5. I could keep going through all of these, and I won't, because it's probably sort of superfluous. Just suffice to say, he is putting together an amazing season. Looks like he's re-signed. Could not be happier. Great stuff, Tommy. Great season. And as I said, a huge chance of being the next captain of the Melbourne Footy Club in 2031 when Maxi retires. So keys to winning. Now, I sort of thought about this, but again, it's sort of what I said at the top. This is no disrespect to Port. We're a better team than them, as indicated by all of the numbers that I read out. But in particular, the rating points, we've got a lot to play for. They don't. I think that I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I think key to winning is playing somewhere close to our best footy. Simple as that. If we play somewhere close to our best footy, we win this game. There's no question. So that's the key to winning. When do we play our best footy? We play our best footy when we win the contest. Win the contested, win all of the contest number, in particular the post-clearance numbers, as I talked about on the podcast on Monday with George. Crazy plus 34 for post-clearance possessions, post-clearance contested possessions against Freo, which was a defining aspect of our win, a defining factor in our win for sure. So expect to see something similar in this game. If we come out and we win with the right energy, we win the contested possession count, we win the post-clearance contested count, we win the ground ball count, we win the pressure. All of those things, come from our intensity, our pressure, our want, our desire. That's where, you get into that space of we've got something to play for and they don't. I expect we will. It goes without saying it's important to start well. That was a huge factor last week. To be level at quarter time was massive. But, really keeping it simple, I think keys to winning is to win the contest battle and winning the pressure battle. Everything else will flow from there. Everything will flow from there. I think that we're a much better running team than them. Even if they had a full injury list, we're a better running team than them. We've got a better athletic profile, but with so many of their key and best players not playing, and at least an injury cloud, you'd think, on Horn Francis. I just think our running power will just overwhelm them. Do what we did last week, get outnumber at contest. Win those ground balls, kick long to a contest, get it in front, win the ground ball, swarm. I don't think we'll play in the same way we did last week, in the sense that, you can't have that many games, sort of where you're so wound up as we were last week. But we're up and about, and every single player in this team will know that Jack Viney is running around on Sunday and is going to demand a spot in. So, every single player, particularly those midfield running types, half forwards, high half forwards, all of those players, the lorries, all of them, they've got a big incentive to play their best footy in this. So I can't see. I have full faith. I was much more nervous about the Suns game than this game. So I have no doubt whatsoever King will have the boys wound up. I don't think he needs to have them wound up. They'll be naturally wound up and ready to roll. A bit of a question is, of course, coming down from last week and the emotion, and also backing up after 2 big weeks. We had a 6-day break into that game. We've got a 7-day break into this game, but we have to travel. It's a good sign that we didn't have any injuries from the last game, an unchanged side. I can't see really, to be honest, I can't see any chance of us not being fully invested and switched on from the get-go, but of course that's important. The key for me to winning is winning the contest battle and swarming them. What do I think will happen? I think that we'll do so. I think we'll jump them. I think we'll establish a lead, and I think we'll go into, I was about to say Kenny G, Warren G regulate mode in the sort of second half of the game and maybe in the last quarter. Not put the cue in the rack, but just go into control mode, which is probably a good thing opportunity for us to practice if we do get that opportunity in this game, to practice that regulate mode. Speaking of which, that won us the game, and it was really appreciated, I thought, by the pundits and the footy commentary about how well we managed the last 6 or 7 minutes of the game against Port. I was really surprised when we got the Petty missed that goal. It was still 7 minutes or something. When we got the lead, there was still 5 minutes or something. I think I'm right in saying that. But we really managed that last sort of 5-6 minutes well, and that was where we did regulate. Like we took the heat out, we moved the ball around, and hopefully that's what will happen in this game. I expect it will. In terms of the betting, I didn't give a tip before. I wouldn't bet in this game at all. I don't think the total match points isn't any good because they're not a high-scoring side, so the opposition has to come to the party in that bet. And the line bet is at 27. I wouldn't go near that either, because whilst I think there's every chance we'll win easily, there's no incentive for us whatsoever for putting the foot pedal to the metal. Percentage isn't, there's no universe in which percentage is now an issue for us. So all the people are complaining about games where, like the Hawthorn game or whatever, well, it's come to pass. It's mattered not a jot that we gave up a 96-point lead against Hawks, not a single jot. So there is no incentive to bury them in that sense. So, there is an incentive to go into control mode, to manage the sort of, I guess, expenditure of energy and all of that stuff. I could see basically Maxi getting rested, hopefully, for the last quarter, but who knows? He'll probably play 100% game time and, not bat an eyelid. So, yeah, I think we'll win. I think we'll win easily, but, I'd say a D's win by 27 points. Right. I'm looking forward to unpacking this with George on Monday. We won't have Andy for a little bit. Andy, if you're listening to this, get well, mate. Really looking forward to having you back on deck. You'll be able to watch this game on telly with the rest of us. And I look forward to previewing next week's game against the Dogs, our final game of the season. It's nuts, isn't it, to think that we're playing finals. As I said before, geez, I'm up and about. The cricket's on the telly. Spring Carnival starts tomorrow. I'm going to go get my form guide now and spend the afternoon doing my form. We're in contention. We're playing finals. We're coming off best win in years. It's a great time to be a Demons fan. It's a great time to be living in Melbourne, the heart of sport in Australia, and I'm super looking forward to the game on Saturday night. My confidence notwithstanding, of course, I'll still be nervous as all get out when the game starts, but I'm really confident that we're going to win this game and keep rolling. I've been Binman. Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you. You'll hear from me on Monday on the Demon Land podcast, and next week on the Stats Bowl preview for the Dogs game. Go D's, go Red Leggers.
It's a grand old flag, it's a high-flying flag, it's an emblem for me and for you. Well, it's the emblem of the team we love, the team of the red and the blue. Well, every heart beats true for the red and the blue, as we sing a song for you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the red and the blue. Where the team played fine in the year 39, we're the team that no one can lick. And you'll find us there after the final bell with the spirit of 1926. Well, every heart beats true for the red and the blue, as we friends sing this song to you. Should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye